All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Too Many Hobbies podcast. I'm your host, Brian Othorpe. Today, I'm being joined by my buddy, Brian Evans. Anybody on the Ohio waterfowl pages, any of the Facebook duck hunting pages will see his boats that he's been building. Brian, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So I want to start this off before we go into the topic, which is building duck boats. I want to start off with where you started waterfowl hunting and how you got into it.
That's a little bit of a long story, but back when I was growing up, I don't know, I was probably 8 to 10 years old. My older brother used to take me down in Virginia, and we would hit up the bays or whatever. I never shot a shotgun. I went with him to watch, and I think he tried to get me into it at an early age, and he was around dogs and everything. And I liked it at the time, but for some reason, I just never got back into it with them and shooting guns back then. And then after quitting my last job and getting into my new job, I had plenty more time, and I decided to go ahead and get into it solo, and learned a lot during the solo time, and then ended up meeting a lot of good people along the way, and it really helped me expand everything with ducks, because at 8 or 10 years old, you don't know exactly what's going on anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So
how long in Ohio have you been solo hunting? Or I guess hunting in general.
I think this will be my 5th year or 6th.
Okay.
Yeah, 5th or 6th season this season.
Okay. So then what, you moved from Virginia. When did you move up here from Virginia?
I was 13 when I got up here.
Okay.
So it was all young, and I remember it pretty well that, my brother would take me out on his boat, and we'd mainly set up for divers, right on the Atlantic over there.
Yeah.
And it was a good time. He had a chocolate dog. She was great. She was very small, chocolate, and I think that's where I really started liking dogs and seeing what they could do.
Yeah.
But I never got into it until I figured out the game myself, and then I could worry about somebody or something else while I'm hunting. So
yeah. And for anybody that doesn't know, Brian lives about an hour away from me, and we got in touch because I sold him some decoys, and we just stayed in touch, and we get along way too well now as it is. But we've also started hunting together last year, which has been really nice. I think that's helped at least me kind of learn how. It's not much different down where you're at, but just the terrain is different. You guys don't have like as many marshes as we've got over here, which is weird because it's not that far.
Yeah. And I don't know, there's just a different vibe out towards you. You got, I don't know, you hit up the water over by you, and it's just different. And then you come over here, and it's just different styles of hunting, I think. Which
is crazy with it literally only being an hour away.
Yeah. It's great. It's great.
Yeah. It's cool because you kind of, you don't have to go very far. And if you want a different feel of what you're hunting, and you can take a small trip, like it doesn't have to be a huge trip, but like your hunts are mostly on the Huron River and my hunts are mostly on the lake. But then we've got Sandusky Bay that isn't too far from either one of us. And there's just so much different stuff around us.
Right.
It's pretty crazy. I don't think a lot of people understand that Ohio hunting is just different.
It is. And, you can go to sleep the night before and you think you know where you're going to go. And then you wake up the next morning, you're like, you know what? I just want to try something else. And you can completely switch up what you want in one night. You could be hunting a field, and then the next morning you're like, you know what? I just want to go chase divers on the lake. And you could
go into the marsh, or you can go into a river. It's just, there's a lot of different terrain around us. And I know, kind of piggybacking off what you said, when I started hunting, that was in college. That was probably 9 years ago or so. And I started hunting with Damien, who's been on the podcast, and Damien's been hunting his whole life, and we still just had to figure it out. Like, there's no, just because you've started when you were a kid doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have it like that.
Right.
Like, you still have to learn how to do everything on your own. We were still calling his dad, being like, hey, what do we do?
Yeah.
And, you know, he had been
And
hunting since he was like 8,
yeah,
just like you.
that's where
But
it's really nice. It's really nice being able to get in touch with people who have been at it for 50, 60 years. I
yeah,
mean, well, I guess they're probably closer to 40. But the guys that I got in touch with, they have seen so much,
right.
and they can give you that much knowledge.
And you get to
So,
hear about the good old days.
oh yeah, everything was better back then, just so you know.
We'll be saying the same stuff to our kids in 20 years. Oh, back in our day, and then back in their
Yeah.
day. It's just gonna exponentially get worse, is probably how that's gonna go.
I hope not.
Well, what made you decide to get a big water boat?
I think let me this was probably 5 or 6 boats ago. I mean, I go through one a year basically, but I started in the marshes
Right,
and I liked it, but the problem was is everybody had marsh boats. So
right.
you run into a lot of people, and I'm one of those people that I just kind of want to be far away from people. So
Yeah,
I tried getting a little bit bigger, then a little bit bigger, and then I was like, you know what, let's just go 21 foot. And now I want just a little bit more bigger.
yeah.
So now I can get into just about everywhere that I want to with the 21. And if I can't, I'll take the small boat out with the long tail and I'll get to where I want to with that. But
Because you
just big
started with
water
one of
is,
those pond prowlers, right?
yeah. So it was one of those. Oh, I think it was a pond prowler. It was a 10 foot. The thing was super stable. I mean, we had it.
Yeah,
I was out fishing with it, and we would hit major wakes, and it would just roll with it. It was amazing how well that thing did. But if I were to go back in time with that blind build, I would have done just like a layout, just
yeah,
layout shot out of it instead of that big frame. But
yeah.
it worked out. I didn't have too many hunts out of it because it was one of those things where you weren't going to get there fast, but
Right.
it was a cool little boat. So
Did you have a trolling motor on that?
I so it was only rated for like 5 horse. I think I put a 7.5 on there, and it
Oh, okay.
still was not doing it. So I had a trolling motor on the front and a 7.5 in the back, and a bunch of weight. It would just did not want to come close to getting on plane, so it was just pushing water.
And that was a scissor style blind, right?
Yeah,
Just
yeah. I made the
conduit.
brackets. Yeah, it was EMT conduit, and then I made all the brackets at work. I welded them up, put them on there, and it worked out pretty well, but just not big enough.
Right. What was after that boat?
After that one, I think it was a 1972 Monarch. I think it was a 16 foot, and it was a wider one, and it was
Okay.
a flat bottom. And let's see, I think I only had a 9.9 on that because I was worried about the title situation.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Trying to worry about titles is just ridiculous. But that was a cool boat. I had a couple of good hunts out of it. Um, if I could go back in time, I think I actually would have kept that boat and then just kept going bigger with the other and just continued to have two because it
Uh,
was super wide.
yeah. That was gonna be my next question is would you have kept that boat thinking back on
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, I should have kept that boat. It had so much potential.
Did you put a blind
It's
on
a
that?
shame. That one had a Avery Quickset when I bought it. And I,
Oh,
I bought the boat pretty cheap. And it was an older Avery Quickset too.
okay.
It actually wasn't a bad blind setup. The only thing I don't like about it is in the cold, I was really nervous about stuff breaking because there's a lot of plastic on there.
Okay.
And I
Yeah,
don't
the
know,
new ones are metal.
I yeah,
They
this was an
fold
older one.
in. Yeah. Because the new ones, the like legs kind of fold in and then it all sits down as one big frame. But it's all metal.
Well, then I definitely had an old one. It
If
was
it was plastic, yeah.
it was plastic. It was plastic hinges or something like that, and I was really nervous about it. I was missing holes out of it. The rivets were broken on stuff, but I think I just ended up shoving like PVC pipe under it to make sure it stayed up. But
Yeah.
it's actually a pretty nice blind. If you're not looking to build one, I would probably recommend one.
Yeah, because I think they're only, I mean, they come with the blind material now, which is like the shaggy 3D type, but it's got like netting and it's got a wind
Yeah.
block inside. And they're like $700.
Yeah, and they cover a boat very well.
Yeah. Well, and
So,
they're easy to set up. They're quick set, you know.
yeah, they're definitely quick set. If you get water on them and you're worrying about freezing though, that might
Oh,
be
it's
a
brutal.
problem.
Yeah. My buddy's got
So,
one, and every time that it gets wet, especially because it rides on the sides and the water will splash up as you're
right.
driving, if once you get there, there'll be icicles on it, or if it's sat overnight, it'll just, you have to like peel it to open it up. I mean,
Yeah,
that's on a big 18-foot boat, but if you had a flat bottom, it would probably cover the entire thing, no problem.
it did a great job. The problem was when I went to fold it all up. Actually, I think I had conduit on the bottom of it, trying to keep it down in the water, like the
Oh,
water would
like
come
weighted
in.
it?
Yeah, it would
Yeah.
weight the material, and that worked out well. But all that material, when you tried to roll it back up in there, it would overhang out the sides, and it's a flat bottom.
Yeah.
It's lower to the water, and it's just getting doused in water.
Yeah. And then you can't do much about that once you get home unless you got a blow dryer.
Yeah, I'm not blow drying a boat.
That's why we get barns, right? Nice heated barns.
Yeah, I'll get there eventually.
Yeah. And so then after that, was that the 17-foot? That was a sea nymph, right?
No, it was a Starcraft.
It was a Starcraft. Yeah.
It was an old Starcraft. It was late 50s, early 60s. The thing had no leaks at all. It was built very well. But it originally had like a cabin on the front of it. And
okay, yeah, that's right. I'm remembering this now.
Yeah, it was a console, and I cut the whole thing apart. And I originally was worried about flexing up by the bow, but I never ran into that. So that boat was also very narrow. It wasn't wide at all. I'm sure you remember when you were out with me on it.
Yeah.
But any wider, it might have had some more flex in there. I don't know if something like that was actually built better in the good old days, or what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you would think if it was, because it didn't have like benches in it. Generally, the benches mean that they're using the bench portion of it to secure the hull. But if it had that big front deck, like I think most people would know, it's like a uni windshield and then it's got like a spot for your feet or whatever under it, and you cut that to open everything up.
Yeah. I took a jig and then went all the way around it and marked it, and then went through with a jigsaw and took my time trying to make it look as good as I could. And it actually turned out pretty nice. And then I used some of that 1/8" edge trimming and went all the way across the aluminum, so it wasn't sharp, and it turned out pretty nice. It got some good looks. And that of course was converted to a tiller, right? Because originally that was all console. So that was a good boat. I'm glad I sold it because it just wasn't enough,
right?
But if I wasn't planning on doing big water, I would have kept it. But I don't know. Lake Erie, as you know, can get pretty nasty pretty quick. So you don't
17's like the minimum.
Yeah. I'd rather not die. I'm okay.
Yeah, I think that's how most of us feel. Yeah. Now, the big thing on that one, that if anybody remembers or if they've seen your new one, is the blinds that you put on them. Do you want to talk about the blind that you put on that one?
Sure. So there's a guy around. I actually went to school with his kids. His name was John, and I got in touch with him from actually Jared from Old Lakeshore Charters.
Yep.
And I explained on Facebook, I'm like, hey, I'm looking for somebody to build this blind up for me, and he suggested them. So I went to him. He welded the whole thing. It turned out phenomenal. I have very little complaints about that blind setup. I think it was perfect for that thing. So he welded it all up. I took it down to an Amish guy that was also suggested by Jared. He put it on for me, and then I brought it back here. I painted it up with Parker paint and an HVLP gun. I did not thin it out at all. I just shot it straight. and somehow it worked out pretty good. And I did the same thing with the newest boat. I just shot it straight. That Parker paint is actually a really nice paint. And then I just, added some little waves into it to break up the color.
Right.
It was nice. The coolest thing about that blind is you'll be getting all the splash right over the gunnels,
Right.
and it would keep it all away, and it would be warm. Yeah, it was a great blind.
Yeah, and that was more of like a shell style with the top had a big canopy over top of it. So that one you'd have your head covered, and then the whole boat you'd be like your neck and above would be visible through that slot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Neck and above. And it was so nice. I had it out multiple times in the rain, and you don't get wet at all. It was perfectly engineered to where the rain would run off the top and splash down right on the side, and no water would get in the boat.
Yeah.
He definitely knew what he was doing when he welded the whole thing up. And I think he had it done in, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, and it was a ton of welding.
Yeah.
He did a phenomenal job on it. I would definitely go back to him.
What was that made out of?
That was rigid and EMT. So he welded both of them. And if anyone knows anything about welding galvanized, number one, is not good for you, and number two, you really gotta watch when you're welding it, because I don't know, it just welds a little funky. But for the most part, don't inhale it because it's really bad. So.
Yeah, that's our PSA for this episode.
Yeah,
don't inhale galvanized welding.
And drugs are bad.
I think that goes without saying, but we might as well say it while we're here.
Yeah, and it's even better if you take up duck hunting, you're not going to be able to afford drugs. So
correct. That's like the biggest thing. I think they should start just taking people from rehab and putting them in a duck blind.
Oh, that would be great.
Like, you're going to get hooked on this, and you're not going to have any money to do anything else. It's okay.
Yeah.
We can start donating our lottery funds to rehab instead.
Gosh, I think you're onto something. You should definitely get in contact with the ODNR.
The DNR, yeah. I'm sure they want a lot to do with me.
Oh, yeah.
Not that I do anything bad, but I've already, YouTube videos, they might not want me to be showcasing rehab and drugs with DNR. You don't, a lot of that stuff don't mix.
No.
Well, you want to talk about your newest build?
Yeah. So this one was a little bit different than John made for me the last time. The only things, let's see. So I built this one a little bit different. John had the previous one kind of eggshelling up on the sides, and I wasn't a big fan of that. I know why he did it. And that's to make sure that you keep everyone center in the boat. Because if everyone goes to stand up and it's not like that, you could flip over the boat.
Okay. Yeah.
So I did not do that on the bigger boat because I felt better about it. So I went at it like a 24-degree angle and went up, I don't know, 18 inches or so around the sides, and then did a very similar setup to where the overhead would just fold right up and over. I did not engineer as well as John did about the water dripping over the front. It almost it pulls up a little bit on the top. So if you're going to be out in the heavy rain, you're going to have to go up, hit the roof, and it'll slide off the side. So if I were to change anything, it would be that. But it's, once again, it's great because when you're on the water, you're deflecting water, you're deflecting wind. You can still reach over the side of the boat and pick up your decoys. And I made that out of maker pipe fittings and welding. And if I were to go back in time, I would have not used maker pipe for 2 reasons. Number one, it'll loosen up over time. Number two, it doesn't look as clean. So I ended up welding all of the maker pipe fittings onto the EMT conduit. and that should definitely do the trick. But it was just a lot of extra work that I had to do, and more money too, because I think I spent
Right.
like $200 in maker pipe fittings so that one. The only rigid that I used was on the top. Everything else was EMT conduit, and I had a ton of time in it, but I really didn't have that much money in it.
Which is
So
nice. Yeah.
it's super nice. And that was the same setup to where I took it down to my Amish guy. He wrapped it for me, brought it back here. I painted it with the Parker. Let's see, the previous boat was bay gray. This one is the hunter green, or I think is what they call it.
Yeah, it's hunter green. Yeah.
It's a great color
Yeah.
for the bays. I like that green, and I would definitely do that again.
See, I think that with the paint portion of it, it's like as long as your boat isn't like yellow or bright blue, then you can pretty much use it wherever you need to.
Yeah, I
Shoreline is
definitely
going to
agree.
be either sand, rock, or like trees. And then anything in the early season is going to have some green to it. So it's like it'll blend in. If it's green, gray, brown, I think anything would go.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The boat was previously painted, I think, probably in spray paint, gray and black, and
Yeah.
it was pretty ugly looking. Um, it's a that hull is pretty beat up, but it's a duck boat.
Yeah.
It's been welded on. I've been chasing rivets on it, but riveted boats are not the way to go. But if you're looking for a duck boat and you're just looking to get by and put some work into it whenever,
Yeah.
it's not bad.
Your cheapest boats that you're going to find are going to be riveted. They're going to be the older Starcrafts, or like mine's a Tracker, or it's Sea Nymph or something like that, is all going to be pretty much the same style hull.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a ton of rivets, a ton of leaking points. So
yeah.
I think the moral of the story is don't beat the boat up too bad, and
Yeah.
it'll thank you.
It's one of those
So,
things, you take care of it, it'll take care of you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, with these older boats, you want to keep it safe. So I put 3 bilge pumps in the thing,
Yeah.
2 automated. So I mean, if there's water coming in there, it's gonna come out. And yeah,
That's all right.
not a big deal.
No. Well, so the big topic that I wanted to cover is building your ideal duck boat. Now, I want to start with, like, for us, you know, we both have marsh boats, we both have lake boats. So I want to try to tackle both of them, because I think the people that are going to listen to this, the majority of them are going to be hunting marshes or shallow water.
Yeah.
But then there's also going to be people like us that live on the Great Lakes or live on a big lake, and they hunt divers. And I think that we could probably touch both topics, maybe give some people some ideas if they're looking to add some things to their boat that we found over the years. We're not professionals by any means, but we've been tweaking with our boats, and I think that we've come to some pretty solid boats and some good ideas to put in them. So if you were going to build a marsh boat for like you and 1 or 2 other guys, what would you start with?
Well, it depends. How much money do I have?
Let's say it's a budget build.
Okay.
So like under $5,000.
Okay. Me personally, if you're just doing marsh, I don't think I would go to an outboard. I would find a nice long tail. You can get, you know, the Predator Harbor Freight 22 horsepower motors, I think like $850. And then with my experience, the backwater kits are top notch. And I think a kit altogether is 1,800 on that. So you're halfway through your build there. But I mean, maybe not in this market because I haven't looked so much, but I'm pretty sure you could cover the rest of that. Maybe, you know, probably $1,500 in a 17-foot flat bottom boat and be just fine. Yep. Depending on what kind of hunting you're doing, me personally, if I'm using a marsh or if I'm using a marsh to hunt, I'm going to hide the boat. I'll stuff the boat and I'll sit in a chair and just like a marsh stool in the reeds because it's good coverage and it's really not that bad. I don't know. I've hunted out of flat bottom boats with blinds, and that's super nice. But I also don't mind sitting in the marsh.
Yeah.
So
yeah, if you're on a budget, I feel like me personally, I'd probably be in the same, no pun intended, but the same boat. And I would probably be in like the 16 to 17 foot, like maybe a Mod V if you could find an old bass tracker or something that you could gut, put a 20 to 23 horsepower long tail on it. And like you can find all this stuff used too. You could probably find a used boat for like $3,000 with a mud motor on it if you really wanted to. And then I feel like if you're going to do a budget build, like you don't necessarily need a blind. Like I could see if you were taking out like your dad and he's 55 or 60 and he's just done walking through the marsh or sitting in the marsh and he's like, I want a blind. It's like, well, then you're going to pay for it. And, yeah, I feel like anything like that, you put a light bar on it and then you're good to go. Like that would be enough to get you to wherever you want to go. But there are some cool things that you can add to those boats. And I know that you've seen like the switch panels with like USB chargers, kind of something that's like, I mean, it's $25, but it's a cool thing to add if you're going to especially be charging like headlamps, if you're going to charge your phone, anything like that. Like, I think that that's a cool accessory. I feel like that's something that a lot of these boats could use.
Yeah, those switch panels are great. I've thrown one in like every boat actually.
Yeah,
they're super nice. And then you add your cheap $13 Amazon LEDs on the inside.
Right. Yep.
Throw your light bar on there, and it's a pretty nice rig.
Well, if you get a 4 switch, you could put your bilge pump on it and your nav lights, and then that's it. You're good to go.
Yeah.
And you could get stencils and do a paint job.
I would say, I don't know. Me personally, I'm good with flat color.
Right.
And then just stuff the boat. You throw your reeds on top. But if you're planning on hunting out of the boat and you want to brush it up good, maybe throw some stencils on there. I'm not sure if the ducks will really care so much, you know.
In my experience,
I don't know. No, if they want to be there, they're gonna be there.
Yeah.
Hide yourself as well as you can, but don't overthink it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I agree. 16, 17 foot budget build, that's perfect. You could take 3-4 guys out there if you really wanted to.
Right. Yeah, and I think that if you did want to do a blind, you can do those. Avery Quickset's a great one. You could build your own. You could do a scissor blind out of conduit and just get like those Bimini top pins on the corners to be able to like connect the Bimini top insert to it and be able to make your own flip top, or not flip top, but the scissor blind, and then throw some cheap Bass Pro grass on it, and you got a blind at least. But I think that you'd be better off just sitting in the reeds.
Yeah, and it's really not all that bad. If you're going to be sitting in the reeds, bring your stool. And then something else that the old guys taught me is you get a pole in there that you can hang your shotgun on.
Yeah.
You can hang your water on, or your blind bag. Get it out of the water.
Yeah.
So
that'd be pretty.
I think that's great.
Now, if you were going to buy a marsh boat, what would be the top of the line one that you would get?
All right. So I have been in like 3 super nice marsh boats. One was a gator tail, 2 had 40 horsepower backwater kits. The only thing that I really liked about the gator tail is being able to go in reverse.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to spin the boat around otherwise.
Right. Yep.
The gator tail boat itself that I was in, it was very nice. The paint held up very nice. But I didn't really like the setup, and I don't think it went through the shallows as well as the longtail did.
Right.
So I would have to say I would go with a boat very similar to what my buddy Shane's got, that aluminum weld 17 foot originally I would have thought my bottom with the square bow, I would take
Yeah.
that. It rides super nice. You can hold more up there. And instead of the Mod V, which comes in and lays down all of your reeds on the side, it kind of just floats right over top and then they pop right back up.
Yeah.
So I would go with a 17 to 18 foot all weld, with a 40 horsepower backwater kit on it. And I'd be a happy camper.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I would be, this is getting pricey, but I think that I would end up doing a 18-foot Prodigy with a 40 horse Gator Tail XD.
Okay, so that's let's see. I think I saw that in a Ducks Unlimited magazine not too long ago. Did you happen to see the one that just came out that brought in
I've
their
seen them
ideal
all.
duck boat? They showed that one and it was pretty nice, but I don't know.
It's just super bougie. And since I wear Sitka, then I'd have to have something like that.
Right. Yeah. And if you brought that to the boat ramp and you weren't wearing Sitka, I'd be very concerned.
Yeah,
like you spent all your money.
People would ask questions for sure.
I'd ask questions. Yeah. I'd be like, this is your daddy's boat, probably.
Most people would probably think that, yeah. But my dad doesn't hunt, so it can't be his boat.
Well.
Now, if you were doing I guess we could even talk about our big water setups, but if you were going to try and do a budget build, maybe a different one than what you've got, what would you be looking for big water?
So I'm not that experienced yet with big water boats, but I've gotten a lot of suggestions because I ask a lot of questions, most of which are dumb. But I would stay away from anything riveted if you can find it. Like there's one, it's a Spectrum 19 foot for sale right now that honestly, I really like that boat. And the floor space is there. Me personally, I just would like something in the 23 to 24 foot range. And I know that's big.
Yeah.
But it's, if you're doing big water, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
So if you've got the extra room, why not?
Yeah. It's all safety stuff at that point.
Yeah. Safety and hauling people and hauling gear. Yeah. I wouldn't go anything less than my 21 that I have right now, unless it was like a 20 footer that was wide and deep.
Yeah.
The Mariner that I have right now is not that deep. I've had it in some nasty stuff. It handles it well, but you always want that more safety thing. So I don't know. My primary, if you can find a budget boat that's welded, go that route. If not, suck it up. You'll be doing rivets every year, every couple of years, whatever.
Yeah.
And go that route.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the Starcraft Mariner is like your typical or your most popular budget big water build because there's so many of them.
Yeah, there's a ton of them.
Yeah. Yours is what, 89?
No, I have the 72 or 74.
Damien has an 88 or an 89. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. I have one of the earlier Mariners where engineers screwed it up. So they caught that a couple of years later down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff had to get done to this boat to compensate for engineers, but whatever, you know, you work with it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I definitely agree. The Mariner is the boat that you're most likely going to see. It's set up well for open water hunting. And it's got a ton of room.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So your budget big water boat, what are you thinking?
Mine is a budget big water boat at this point. I mean, it's a 19-foot 8. I rounded up to 20 foot tracker Magna, side console, 115 horse Johnson motor. It's a 1993. Haven't had any issues with it, but I bought it for $4,500. So like it's stayed pretty well budget. I haven't done a whole lot of work to it. I haven't needed to. It's wide open. It's got front deck. That's perfect for the layout boat, perfect for decoys, the full transom. If I was going to get something different, I feel like I would end up getting like a Mariner, probably a newer one. For a budget wise, Mariner, one of the sea nymphs. I mean, like they're all the same style, but I feel like I would probably go with an Islander. I feel like
Agreed.
I would do the conversion, taking the cabin off. I cut it the same way that you cut your 17 foot. That's the same way that they do it on the Islanders, but the sides are higher.
Way higher.
I mean, you'd have to
double the Mariner.
Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that it's an inboard outboard, so you'd have to put the offshore bracket on it. But I mean, you can get those Islanders. My neighbor's Islander is a 26 foot. You can go big with those, and they're not that expensive. People are pretty much giving them away because everybody has lost they have no idea how to keep a inboard outboard running.
Yeah.
They just let them go to shit. Yeah.
Yeah. You need to throw an outboard at it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just easier. I mean, you got better turning radius with an outboard. It's easier to service. And I mean, generally they have a little bit more power top end than an inboard outboard. Inboard outboard would have a little bit more torque, but that's about it. And it'd probably be negligible at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
There's so many options for like the big water aluminum hull that you could do. I mean, there's so much, but I feel like the biggest thing that people miss the point on is that if you're going on the big water, you're just looking for something safe, and anything that's not a mod V, a flat bottom, a 14-foot deep V, like we said mentioned earlier, the 17 would probably be the minimum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if you're hunting from shore. Because I think that's a distinguishing factor too, is are you layout hunting out of it or are you shore hunting with it, just using it to get to a spot on shore?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And sometimes I don't think bigger is better, but for a lot of the stuff around here, it's Lake Erie. It changes quick. Bigger might be better.
Yeah. I feel like around here, like with my 20 foot, it's like I've been in 5-foot waves and it's not fun, but it makes it. And I feel like I'm more comfortable with that being, I guess, on the smaller side of big water boats with the full transom. Because then I don't feel like if I'm riding waves that they're going to come crashing over the back and then just swamp it. But like an Alumacraft with like the back deck where it drops down, or even like the 18-foot trackers that have the little indent back there for the motor, there's the chance that could happen.
Yeah. And on my Mariner, the guys who had it before me, they built up the splash well. So it would take quite a bit to overcome the entire splash well.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they did that, because most Mariners they dip way down.
Yes.
And I haven't flooded that splash well out. I'm sure if you just went wide open throttle, you could blow it all out. But if you're flooding the splash well out, you're probably in some pretty nasty stuff and you don't want to go wide open. So,
well, I think a lot of people miss the fact too that grommet is back there, that all of the motor controls come into, and your fuel line and stuff. That's a hole in the boat. If that stays underwater, you're gonna get water in the boat.
Yeah, you definitely need a good way to get the water out. So
yes. Yep.
But it's ideal not to have any water in there to begin with.
Yeah.
So
well, if you think you're going to, you just put 3 bilge pumps in it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
It's not the worst idea. Yeah, no, you're not going anywhere. You'll be helping people if they are sinking.
While I sink.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully not, but it's possible. Now, if you were going to do, I think we're both going to have the same answer on this. So if you were going to get a brand new big water boat, what are you doing?
Oh, man. I'm going straight Great Lakes, I think. The reviews and what I have seen, that's like top-notch engineering. I'm not the best welder. I can weld to get you by.
Yeah.
I can't weld aluminum. That's a beautiful art, I think. And you look at theirs, and it's just top-notch work.
Yeah.
So I really like that. I saw the one that you sent, or that I commented on Facebook yesterday, and that seemed pretty similar.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that in between water, Great Lakes scenario.
Yeah.
I think there are a ton of duck waters out there.
Yep.
And from what I've heard, I wouldn't go that route.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that they're bad boats. I mean, I just think that they have their flaws. I've heard that they get a little wet if you get in some real deep stuff. I just don't know. There's a lot out there. I think that one that you're talking about was a rider. Started with an R.
Was it? Man, that's gonna bother me now.
Yeah, me too.
It's a custom boat shop. I don't even think they do it. I don't even think they do a bunch of deep water stuff. I think they do a lot of like flat bottom stuff, and they threw that in there. I think.
Yeah. It kind of looked like it was more of like it come from some sort of line of like flat bottom, just the way that the hull kind of came up at the front. I don't know. It looked a little weird to me.
Yeah.
See, if it was me, I'd be really torn between if I was going to go with like a 23 or a 25 foot. I think I would personally go 23 just because I like to be able. I think that the max that I could fit in the spot that my boat is sitting in my barn would be 23. But it's an AlumaWeld Columbia, and it's a tiller boat, but it's a deep V tiller boat, and it's rated for a 250 horse tiller. And I mean, it's wide open. It's got 4 or 6 pedestal seats on the main floor, and then it's got the big like fishing deck like mine has. But dude, it is wide. I mean, it is huge, and it's got this really cool tiller console that slides out. And it's got all this storage in it. It's just, if I was gonna go with like a mass-produced boat, I think that's what I would do. But if I was gonna go for like a custom duck boat, I would go with the Great Lakes boats. Just I love the way that they look.
Yeah, they look super sharp. And now that you mentioned that other boat, I think you did bring up something super important for people to know is having a tiller is actually, in my opinion, better than console. You've got a better turning radius, and I feel like you can just get to things a lot easier off a tiller. And if I were to build something, I would try to put like a huge tiller on the back of it and go that route.
I've just always liked, like, coming from the fishing aspect of it, like when you have people in there that are moving around and everything, like having the tiller and not having to like walk around the console is like huge. And that's why I went with the side console that I have. I was looking for a side console boat, and for whatever reason that one ended up popping up for me. And it's like, the layout is perfect. I think that the only thing that I would change on my boat now is put a 4-stroke motor on it, so it's a little bit more reliable.
Yeah. From what I've heard, though, you'll never get that top end. Like, it's just a different feel from 2-stroke to 4-stroke.
Yeah, but I don't care about the speed.
Yeah. I guess I completely understand that. I've been in boats with newer 4-strokes, and it is super nice.
Yeah.
Just putting it right in the water.
Yeah.
You turn the key and it comes on. You don't have to mess around with anything.
Right. Well, for me, it's like if my son's going to be coming out with me in a couple of years, like there's no chance that I'm going to take him in like sub-freezing water or sub-freezing anything and get stuck out there.
Well, 𝐦𝐨𝐵𝐞.
He'll have it, I'm sure.
So there you go. You saved him right there.
That might be, yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. I just, those 4-strokes and just having a new motor, even if they still sold those Evinrude E-Techs, like I think they stopped selling them in 2019.
I think you'd know better than me on that one.
So I think it was 2019 they went out, they discontinued them. And I mean, those are brand new motors too. They're 2-stroke, but like they would have so much more amenities to them that would keep them running better. Like if I was like, oh, I go out on the lake with that, no problem. Just because I know it's not going to have like compression issues. There's not going to be starter issues. There's not going to be wiring issues. There's not going to be carb issues. Like it's a new motor.
Right.
They didn't care if it would be a 2-stroke or a 4-stroke, but they just don't make new 2-strokes anymore.
No, I don't know if that's something to do with pollution or what their attempt is there, because I like 2-stroke, but I'm definitely with you. The reliability, I mean, I've got a 2004 90 horse on mine.
Yeah,
it's the reliability is not going to be there.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, with mine's in 1993, and it's like I've gotten stuck once, and I didn't like it. But it was 100%. It was 100% my fault. I did a video on it anyway. I think I talked about it on this podcast already, but it was 100% my fault. But it's just the fact of like, it had an issue because it was older, and I took the cowling off to address that issue. And then when it was the shifter. So the little pin that, or the clamp that holds the sheathing for the shifter so that the cable will run through it. And like hung up, or one of the one side broke, so it twisted, and I took my elbow and I slammed into it, and I broke it completely off. So I could only shift it from the back on the motor, and I had to have the cowling off for it. And then I hit a sandbar because my GPS wasn't working, and then all the water rushed up off the back transom and into the intake. So it's like, that was my fault. I hydrolocked the motor, but I wouldn't have had to do that if I had old controls with an old motor that had the issue.
Right.
So that's where I land on that. But there's also, I want to talk about like accessories for the big water boats that some people, like I know I have one major one that I don't think people think about, but like a lot of people don't have GPS. But if you're going to go out on the big lake, like you want to have depth finder, you want to have GPS, like you're driving in big water at night and you're going higher speeds than you are in a marsh. So like if there's anything that you would want to put in your boat, what would that be?
I actually really like having a chart plotter.
Yeah.
Something that tells me the depths before I even get there.
Yep.
Like places that you've taken me.
Yeah.
If I wouldn't have followed you, I would have looked down and found out exactly where sandbars were, because the last thing I want is to knock one of those things. So
right.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And that's an easy one.
Yeah. Like for me, something that I bought this year that's going to be really helpful, especially for layout hunting, is just a new trolling motor. Having spot lock and being able to like jog over to different decoys and stuff without having to like man the motor and then also be trying to pick up decoys, that's going to be a game changer for me and for anchoring the boat when people are in the layout boat. Like I can just hit spot lock, sit there, and then when they're ready, instead of pulling up a wet anchor rope, I just pull up the trolling motor and I'm gone. It's going to take away the spot that I'd put my layout boat in the front, but I have plenty of room in the back that I can put the layout boat.
Yeah, I would really like to be a part of one of those hunts that you have that, because that might sell me on that. I can.
I think it will.
Pulling up long lines, and most of the time I hunt with myself and one other guy, because most of the time everybody else is doing their own thing, and that's a pain in the butt trying to control a big motor, pull up decoys, try to make sure it's all organized, because in a boat, if it's not organized, you could fall.
Right.
So
you
got to take your time, and I think that spot lock is going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, it's like one of those things that's 100% not necessary, but it's like a wish list item. Like those Danik hooks, they're not necessary, but they're nice.
Yeah. Actually, that is a really nice thing for big water. You know, the older guys, they told me, hey, it's a really good idea to just, you know, you tie up your boat on your anchors, one off the stern, one off the bow, and then you just have a float. So if you need to go get ducks, you untie yourself, you go out, you grab your ducks, and you tie yourself back up.
Yep.
Those Danik hooks are perfect because they clip right on. And then they also have a spot where you can attach your fenders, like, or what I like to do anyways, attach my fenders. So
Yeah.
when I'm done, or when I got to go get a duck, I unhook it, throw it in the water, it
Yep.
floats, the anchor's already set. You come back and you attach it back on.
Yep.
So, and you can go right back to hunting.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people that are going to be like, I'd say shore hunting, but like if they wanted to build a blind like you've got and be able to use it, that's the most effective way to be able to use it. Cause you're going to have to go get cripples if you're hunting divers. Yeah. And it's like you have a dog, but like that dog's not going to swim a quarter mile to get a goldeneye.
Right. And
so
I wouldn't put my dog through that to begin with.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, yeah, if that dog makes it more than like 300 yards swimming, you are probably going to be motoring to get that dog anyway.
Yeah.
They're not going to catch it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like anybody that has a dog cares too much, but I feel like some people just wouldn't be paying attention if it's something that they're just getting into.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if they are just getting into it, spend a year or two without a dog, go with somebody that has a dog, learn that, but learn what you're doing first before getting a dog. I think if you just try to get a dog in there, you're going to end up hurt. The dog's going to end up hurt, or you're not going to have the right experience with hunting. And you'll probably end up getting right out of it because it's just too much. You got to take it slow.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I can't think of anything else that we should cover, but I have one question that I've asked my previous guests, and I'll ask you to end this off. If money wasn't an issue, what is one other hobby that you would pick up?
Oh my gosh. I don't even know, because my whole year revolves around these 3 months. So I like fishing. I go out and I fish when I can, but I don't even know. I would, you know what? I would, if money wasn't an issue, I'd go to Alaska for all 3 months and I would hunt in Alaska probably, I don't know, once every 5 years. But
fair enough.
It's still hunting. I don't know what else I would do. I don't have any other aspirations.
No.
Nothing.
I mean, it's good enough.
I'm so full when I'm out in the duck blind.
I feel the same way. But if money wasn't an issue, I would probably get into like classic cars.
Okay. You bring that up and now I'm like, yeah, I could definitely go for one or two in my collection.
Yeah. I feel like that's like the one thing right now that like I really enjoy cars, but not as much as I enjoy hunting and fishing. And like, I mean, my big ones are like the hunting, fishing, camera stuff, working out. Like I don't have any other time to be tinkering with other stuff. If I didn't have to worry about money, then I just buy a nice classic car I didn't have to work on.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to get at. Is if money's not an issue, who cares?
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, that's a pretty good one to bring up. I've got one, but it's been sitting for like 6 years. I haven't had time to work on it. Maybe like not even the motivation.
I feel like you start getting into this kind of stuff and it just kind of consumes you completely.
Yeah, 100%. So if you were to go into this, what would be your first buy?
Probably like a mid 1950s Chevy Bel Air. And then I would probably stick in the 50s for a second one. I would get like a half-ton truck, like maybe an the Ford F1 or F100. I can't remember which one's in that time frame. but like I know the Chevys have a 3100. I feel like that would be something like, I just love the old like rounded body style of the trucks and the cars, and like that Chevy Bel Air is always just like stuck right here. Like
What color in the Bel Air?
white and blue, like a baby blue.
That's the almost like a seafoam green.
Yes.
It's like a greenish blue.
Yep. I've seen that car a couple times in my life, like in person, and every time I just like melt. I'm like, oh my God. If it has the 5-spoke chrome rims, shut it down. I'm taking it with me.
And they're so big. Think of all the decoys you could throw in.
I know I could fit more than I do in my Camry now. I'd get rid of that thing.
Probably like quadruple the amount.
Probably, yeah. Well, dude, it was nice having you on. A lot of good information. If anybody wants to listen to more of these podcasts, just make sure to hit the plus if you're on Apple Podcasts. Make sure to subscribe if you're on other ones. Check out Too Many Hobbies YouTube channel. And Brian's wearing some of the merch right now. If anybody wants any t-shirts or anything, it's in the description of all the YouTube videos. Brian, thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Brian.
See ya.
Okay.